So, Shabbat Shalom. We read this week the famous words, Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdof. Justice, justice you shall pursue. These opening verses of Parshat Shoftim refer to the Shoftim, the judges that the Israelites are commanded to appoint in each tribe, and turn our attention to law and justice. We find this famous biblical aspiration at the beginning of this week's reading as if it serves to be the thesis statement for the entire Parsha, and perhaps even the basis for the entire Israelite society. As Moses continues to elaborate on the extensive set of laws that the Israelites are to follow, it becomes clear that he is laying the groundwork for just this. He wants to create a civilization that is both holy and just. And in addition to the administration of a judicial system, Parshat Shoftim covers a range of topics, including the legal status of the priests and Levites, the danger of false prophets and idolatry, provisions to create cities of refuge, and the laws pertaining to war and battle. Now, of course, the Torah is really speaking here about the ethics of combat and warfare when we're speaking about war. However, in these strange times, we often use the language of war to understand our current situation. We consider ourselves to be in a battle against a virus. We are entrenched in our homes, and we make decisions of entering public spaces based on their perceived safety. The Torah includes many instances of battles, tribal conflict, and outright war. These texts may be troubling or instructive in and of themselves. They can also be read with other layers of meaning. There's one particular line of this week's Parsha that I want to explore a little further this Shabbat. As it is written, when you are in your war against a city, you have to besiege it for a long time in order to capture it. You must not destroy, Bal Tashchit, its fruit trees, wielding the axe against them. You may eat of them, but you must not cut them down. So this term, Bal Tashchit, is used in some Jewish environmental circles to highlight the values of conserving resources and not being wanton or wasteful with God's creations. For the mitzvah of Bal Tashchit demands a degree of care and attention to the preservation of fruit trees, even in times of war. This interpretive approach to the text addresses issues beginning with trees and fields and battlefield behavior, and it leads us to issues of responsibility toward our natural environment beyond wartime. The same text can be read in a more metaphorical way, yielding insights and teachings about the battles and internal struggles we sometimes face in our lives. Some traditional Torah commentaries find within this battle imagery wisdom addressing the interplay between the different parts of our very selves, and that sometimes conflicted forces or energies or yearnings that we carry with us and within us. With this interpretive lens, we may see the different elements of war, the land, the besieged city, the attacking army, and the fruit trees as a part of our world, or at least as parts of our experience in this moment now. The elements are internal to our psyche and to our spirit. We are invited to ask ourselves, what parts of my life feel embattled? And in those distressed areas of our lives, what might fruit trees represent in the context of my life's struggles? We can consider what are those elements of our lives that are so precious and so holy that they sustain us through hardship. And at times, it's easy to identify the metaphorical attacking army or the metaphorical fruit trees that require our protection. And other times, that task is significantly more challenging. Yet, as we enter this month of Elul, we know that it is so crucial to our overall well-being. As with the environmental reading of this verse, we can learn from the Torah's level of concern for trees that may bear fruit after a battle. The experience of illness or pain or loss may call forth feelings of struggle, mustering of internal resources, which we are preparing for a kind of siege. Many people speak of battling against disease, buckling down through invasive treatments, fighting to recover, or wrestling within the system or within one's family with different employers or finances. The metaphor of battle is violent and ridden with conflict. It assumes that there will be casualties and acknowledges that parts of the landscape of our lives are likely to get trampled. In fact, many medical treatments, such as surgeries or different medications, chemotherapies, radiation, all involve some physical harm or diminishment on the road to healing. In struggling with illness or loss, we can identify what parts of ourselves we may yet hope to bear fruit again in the future seasons and protect those fruit trees. It may include our resolve or our love for learning, our propensity for spiritual growth, perhaps just the simple appreciation of the beauty and blessings around us. The trees that bear fruit might represent our sense of humor or optimism, our capacity to love, our basic humanity, and our special relationships with one another. Whatever those precious, life-affirming parts of ourselves we identify, they deserve to be protected and nurtured throughout all of our life's ordeals. They often hold out hope for the future, as well as sustaining us for the present. As we enter this month of Elul, we begin the spiritual work required to lead up to Rosh Hashanah and the days of awe, the Yamim Noraim, culminating with Yom Kippur, our Day of Atonement. In the seasons of human relationships set out in our tradition, Elul is the opportune time for a soulful and honest reflection on our actions of the past year. We may ask ourselves, whom did I harm, hurt, or mistreat in any way, whether intentionally or inadvertently? And how have I transgressed or neglected my obligations to the Jewish people? In both areas, we are encouraged in Elul to seek teshuvah, a healing or restoration of those relationships, to whatever extent that is possible. And Elul, the mood and the blessings embedded in the calendar support us in the often difficult work of changing our lives for the better. For all who yearn to begin this new Jewish year joyfully, or as sometimes we consider it a clean slate, whatever that means, Elul is the prime time to go to our loved ones and deeply within ourselves to earnestly ask for and to grant forgiveness. According to the Talmud, it is the work of reaching forgiveness with others in our lives which paves the way for our wholehearted and prayerful approach to God for forgiveness during the High Holy Days. We do not approach the High Holidays as a moment that grants atonement, but rather it is a process that starts now, that takes over a month of intentional thought and intentional practice and reflection. So we pray, may the source of life that nurtures the world blossom into fruit trees and stir our hearts towards teshuvah. Let us be strengthened at this time for life and for love, for uprightness and forgiveness, for justice, for healing, and for blessings. Shabbat Shalom.